Happy Ardbeg Day, one and all. I'm Dr. Bill Lumsden, Master Distiller for Ardbeg, and with me today is Gillian Macdonald, our Master Blender. Now, welcome to the main event, and the time has almost come for us to taste the star of the show, the mighty Ardcore.
Thank you, Bill. And that's right, the final act is just waiting in the wings, and the uncorking of Ardcore is just a few sips away. However, we must do right by this incredible malt and knock back some of the smoky originals that have paved the way. So we have Ardbeg 10 and Ardbeg Uigeadail to do a comparison to. But before we go on to that, what is it like? How's it felt today to be back on Islay and in amongst the people?
Well, you know, it's just absolutely marvellous, Gillian, because this is actually the first time I've been at the distillery on Ardbeg Day for 20 years. Gosh. So, you know, it seems almost surreal to me.
Yeah, it must be amazing. And did you get to get about? We've got loads of, we had loads of things out. We had Rocktails, the record store.
Yeah, I mean, I tried a few of the Rocktails, the punk group playing there. So the whole theme is just, it's jumping. The distillery and the island are jumping. The
atmosphere is incredible. Yeah. So many people have pilgrimed over. It's a real joy. So let's get stuck in then, shall we? And kick things off with the benchmark that is Ardbeg 10.
And you know, we always use the 10-year-old as our control, so to speak, the flagship product, and we compare everything else to this. And you know, Ardbeg has always been bottled as a 10-year-old. So what I love about the 10-year-old, it's got this real raw saltiness to it, and you know, it's the essence of the distillery and Islay itself. So lovely pale gold colour from the American oak barrels we use.
It's beautiful.
It's really beautiful, and it's one of the things that always astonishes me about Ardbeg whiskies is that we know that the malted barley is amongst the most heavily peated anywhere in the world for a whisky. But on the nose to start off with, you think, really? It's just so restrained and so in balance. And I'm just going to add a little bit of water. Would you like some in yours?
As you're at it, thank you. It's always so incredibly fruity on that lime, there's herbal notes.
I mean, there's no question the purifier on the line arm of the still just makes it such a complex whisky. But now I'm just getting a little bit of that pungent peat smoke in there. Still a bit restrained, but just wait. Let's taste it. A remarkable sweetness for 1 or 2 seconds, and then bang! You just get all these layer after layer of oily, tarry, peat smoke flavours.
Yeah, when you breathe in, it's just...
You know, it's espresso coffee, it's tarry rope, it's Cuban cigars, Monte Cristo, I think.
Of course, and you've got that medicinal, those medicinal notes in there as well.
And there's something medicinal, almost ever so slightly anaesthetising or soothing about it. And then you get that lovely, slightly sweet malted barley base in there. But it's a staggeringly complex whisky.
Absolutely glorious. It really is an absolute classic. Amazing. And of course, we use this for all of our comparative tastings, so all our experimental, certainly for our Big Day as well. So this is what we benchmark everything against. So as long as it's different from this, then we know that we're onto something. We've created something that's worthy of a release.
Yeah, we like our releases to have a little bit of this, you know, be clearly related to it. But there you have it. Ardbeg 10-year-old, the classic archetypal Ardbeg whisky.
Absolutely stunning. Right, well, let's move then on to Uigeadail. And you can talk us through this. Obviously, very different in colour, and there's a clue there as to potentially what this has been matured in. So,
you know, the reason I chose Uigeadail for this tasting today, Gillian, is because it's such a personal whisky to me. And way back in the late 1990s, I was starting to experiment when I became the master distiller and make a slightly different style of Ardbeg. So Uigeadail, named, of course, after the loch way up on the hillside where we draw our process water from. It was actually my very first creation for the Ardbeg brand. So it's a historical, very personal one. And thank you for pointing out the wonderful colour there. So, of course, this is a very strong hint that we've used slightly different casks for this. So the 10-year-old, all American oak, ex-bourbon barrels, but for this bad boy here, There are some classic American oak bourbon barrels, but there's a healthy dose of Spanish sherry casks in there as well.
Which you can get on the nose. And this is at higher strength too, isn't it?
Yeah, this is over 50%. Yeah. And, you know, the sherry cask, the Oloroso, which is kind of medium sweet in style, I think really gives a big hit of both colour and flavour to it. And, you know, what this always makes me think of is kind of barbecue type flavours, you know, sort of maple cured bacon, hickory smoked ham, things like that.
Yeah, and you can certainly get the raisins and milk chocolate as well in there too. Yeah, obviously the smoke is there too, you can't disguise that.
I mean, this is such a rich whiskey. This is almost a meal in a glass. Okay, let's taste it. You know, the first thing I notice is it's got an incredible viscosity to it.
Completely coat your mouth.
A lovely oiliness. And, you know, in practice, what happens is that it clings to your palate. So the flavours of this linger. They go on and on forever. And you mentioned dried fruits. There's raisins, there's dates, there's a bit of chocolate in there, maybe a little bit of cinnamon or ginger. All these sizzling spices. And
the choice of casks, does it kind of mask the smoke a bit, or do you think it brings it out? Or different smokes, maybe?
I think it expresses the smoke in a different way. So with the 10-year-old, it's a bit more medicinal, whereas with this, it's a kind of ever so slightly sweeter smoke, more aromatic smoke. And you know, talking of smoke, as you know, Gillian, occasionally I enjoy a nice little cigar. So, you know, a glass of Uigeadail, a Monte Cristo number 4, and I'm in heaven.
Well, indeed. Let's.
I'm going to taste this again.
Get the mouth coating part, and it is just glorious. It's absolutely wonderful. So, are we ready for the?
I think it's now time to move on to the main event and start considering Ardcore. So,
tell me about this. I obviously know quite a bit about it, but for the audience at home, where did the ideas come from? What was it like? Give me the overview.
So, you know, when we are creating new whiskies for Ardbeg, sometimes we can do it by choosing different barrel types, as we clearly did for Uigeadail there. Sometimes it's a bit more process-driven, and on one or two occasions we've even gone right back to look at the raw materials. So we had a bit of success, as you know, using chocolate malt in our company. We've experimented with that, and we really like these nice, subtle coffee, mocha, chocolate flavours. But for Ardbeg, you know, to be honest, I just didn't think that would work. Maybe just a little bit too subtle. And, you know, we're talking about flavours here that give you a slap in the face. So we decided to use black malt rather than chocolate malt.
Go large,
So the black malt is similar. It's from the same family, but this has been roasted to within an inch of its life, and it is the richest, darkest style of malted barley you can use.
Practically incinerated almost.
Absolutely. And, you know, these malts are quite tricky to use in practice. So the mash bill was 75% distilling malt, 25% black malt. We couldn't really go any higher than that.
Because it causes issues, doesn't it? In the distillery for processing and everything.
Drainage, runoff issues. But one of the other secrets here is that the 75% distilling malt, we didn't use Ardbeg's classic ultra heavily peated because we didn't want to completely lose the intensity of the black malt. So it was light to medium peated malt we did.
Which allowed it to shine. And we were over for the trial, and the sights, the looking into vessels and the smells were completely disruptive, completely different from normal. So do you want to sort of talk us through that, really?
I mean, when we're making these whiskies, we try and keep things a little bit secret and a little bit confidential. But, you know, anyone who was in the distillery that week, nearly 10 years ago, you know, the mash was jet black. The washbacks were black. Even the draft, when it went out at the end, was black. And the smells were just amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I'd never smelled anything like it. And from a distance, you could be forgiven for thinking that the distillery was on fire. That was the type of smells we were getting.
Yeah, it was incredible. There was such an impact so early on in the process. And then we've chosen to mature this in what types of casks then?
Yeah, again, you know, my first feeling was the raisiny sweetness of sherry might be interesting, but again, I think that might have taken away from the overall oomph, the impact of the black malt. So it was a combination of first fill and refill ex-bourbon barrels. And again, as you know, we talked about it at the time, I was maybe going to go 100% refill. But, you know, the black malt was just too strong for that, and we needed some first fills to sweeten it and just take the edge off it. And so that's how we did it.
That's how we have it. So a combination of first and second fill bourbons, but the majority of those being the first fills.
Exactly.
To layer on those sort of vanilla flavours and soften it ever so slightly, Had we gone second fill, it would have been even bigger, even larger, and probably more severe and fierce.
It might actually have been painful.
Yes, yes, exactly. More painful than biting on a spiky ball?
Well, maybe not quite that painful.
Excellent. So let's get
let's try it. And of course, the name is fairly obvious, because when we first started describing this monster we had under production, we just said it was the most hardcore tasting Ardbeg we'd ever had. Hence the name Ardcore.
Most extreme end of the scale for the malt as well. So
so you know, it's a lovely natural pale gold colour. So this is from the American oak, and at full strength, gee whiz. You know, it's like tar, it's like soot, it's like, you know, do you remember Camp Chicory flavoured coffee essence? That's what this is making me think of. It's taking me back to my childhood.
And there's quite a lot of like yeasty, marmitey aromas in there as well.
Marmite, and you know, guess what? To many people, Ardbeg is a Marmite whiskey.
Yeah, very divisive.
We love it, obviously. But yeah, that's almost savoury note in there. Now again, I think a little splash of water, just, you know, to take the edge off the intensity and open it up and coax out a little bit more of that flavour. Yeah.
So this is obviously a very front-end led raw materials trial, which is brilliant to see, actually, because, you know, not many people want to play around with their process too much. Most distilleries are all about consistency and just keeping everything the same. So
you know, in our company, Gillian, consistency is a bad word. What's that all about? We like things to be different. We like things to be edgy. We like things to be sometimes a little bit controversial. But, you know, with water now, I'm getting this very, very strange herbal top note. You know, is it carbolic soap? Is it dirty pine resin? Very strange indeed.
Well, herbal is quite an obvious note for Ardbeg anyway. So yeah, it's expected to be in there somewhere, but it's had a twist.
Shall we give it a go?
Right, come on.
Dare we taste it?
We shall.
I'm almost
steady yourself.
Stepping backwards there. I talked about the saltiness and the sweetness, the juxtaposition, the 10-year-old, the viscosity of Uigeadail. And you know what this is like? As I said, it's like biting on a spiky metal ball. It's got that real sort of needly type thing going on there.
There's that prickly effect. But you also, there is this sweetness creeping in that you can taste the influence of those first fills.
The sweetness is trying to get out there, but it's being stamped down by the black malt. And you know, it's a very, very obvious impact on the flavour. And even at only 25% in the mash bill, my goodness, there's something very, very different about this. And it's like a big bit of charcoal or bonfire embers, if you can imagine chewing on a bonfire ember, which of course is not something we recommend, but that's kind of the sensation you're getting with Ardcore. Right, I'm going to give myself another wee shot. It's you know, it's like getting a kick in the pants there. It's really kind of brings you alive, uplifts you. And you know, I would almost go as far as to say the flavours are mucky. Yeah, they're not subtle and elegant and delicate. They're mucky, they're dirty, they're deep.
Yes, exactly.
It really is an in-your-face whiskey.
Yeah.
But we think people are just going to love this because it really is, as the name says, probably one of the most hardcore Ardbegs we've ever made.
Exactly. Excellent. Well, I think it's...
And you know when you suck on a really strong peppermint?
Yes.
I'm getting that. It's almost a cooling...
Aniseed as well.
Yeah.
Lots of aniseed in
Aniseed,
there.
licorice.
Yeah, licorice. Yeah. It's incredible. Wow. Well, congratulations. I think we deserve...
Indeed, yes. So, there you have it, ladies and gents. Ardbeg Ardcore, our 2022 Ardbeg Day release.
So we have some burning questions for you now, Bill. Yes, people have been flooding in on ardbeg.com over the last couple of weeks, so I've got a few ready for you here.
I will do my best to answer these.
Get yourself in the mastermind chair. So the first one is from Brendan in Sydney. Do you plan the committee releases ahead of time, or do you experiment wildly and then just release it to the world when it's ready?
Well, Brendan, I would love to say that it's just completely chaotic, but obviously we do have to put a little bit of planning in. But you know, essentially what we do is that we are always experimenting here at the Ardbeg Distillery, and at any one time we've maybe got 20 or 30 different experiments on the go. But as we get nearer each Ardbeg Day, we'll taste some of our offerings and then make a decision on that. So it's a yes and a no to your question. There's a bit of planning, but you know, we just like to try different things.
Exactly, and certainly the front end led things where we've changed the process or the raw ingredients. We track them all the way through the maturation, whereas we can play a bit more maybe with the cask options further back. So excellent. So question 2 is from Volker in Germany. Which is your favourite Ardbeg bottling of the last few years and why?
Now, Volker, that's a tricky question, and it's almost like saying to me, who do I prefer, my son or my daughter? Because, you know, they're all our babies here. But to be honest, if I was only to choose one, it would probably have to be Ardbeg Alligator, because it was such a fun project to work on. It was such a distinctive whiskey, and the way we positioned it as well with the alligator theme, because of the char inside the barrels, made it fun. And of course, we believe that there possibly still are alligators here on the island.
Never been non-confirmed, so we'll run with that. So question 3 is from Reese in Canada. Is toasted black malt the same as chocolate malt, as made famous by another Dr. Bill whisky? And P.S. keep up the good work. OK, well, thank you. I will certainly endeavour to keep up the good work. So it's not the same as chocolate malt. It's from the same family. So after the germination stage, the base green malt is put into a roaster, and the temperature is ramped up sometimes to almost 300 degrees Celsius. But the chocolate is just one step back from the black malt we've used here. And the chocolate malt still has a little bit of subtlety to it, whereas the black malt, it's crazily roasted as you can get. And you imagine dark beer like stout, something like that. If you compare a stout to a lager, that's what we're talking about here with the black malt. Certainly. Excellent. So question 4 is from Dale in Miami. This is quite a long one.
Right,
so please concentrate while I read this out. Would you ever distill and bottle an Ardbeg without using the purifier during distillation? If you have tried this experiment before, how does the body and taste of the new make spirit differ from without using with using the purifier? P.S. Still going.
Oh, wow. I
still have my fingers crossed for that Ardbeg 3-year-old, and one day that's going to be released in Refill X Bourbons.
OK, so Dale, thank you for these questions and the comment. And yes, I do remember that conversation about the 3-year-old in one day, and I'll come back to that. Right. But in terms of blocking off the purifier, I can neither confirm nor deny that we've actually done that. So that's my top line answer. But if we were, just say we had done that, you know, what do you think would happen, Gillian? Because the purifier recycles the vapours.
Exactly. Well, that PT paradox would just be no more, wouldn't it? So we would certainly have, I'd say, a bigger and maybe chunkier type of spirit?
Bigger, chunkier taste profile. So, of course, it's the purifier that sets Ardbeg aside from its peer group in the island, and it does give a degree of balance to the flavour. But without the purifier, I think we'd have much bigger, fuller flavour.
Yes, certainly.
Now, in terms of the 3-year-old and 1 day, way back in the day, actually at the same time as I launched Ardbeg Uigeadail, for a bit of fun, we actually bottled a 3-year-old whisky, which we called the Oogling, the baby Uigeadail, which is a much sought-after whisky. And it was just, you know, to let people see, to take them one step closer to the distillation process. But that bottling, which was from one single cask, was an Oloroso sherry cask. So if we were to do it with only bourbon barrels, I think the results would be spectacular. And it would be, you know, the 5-year-old wee beastie. This would be the tiny beastie. So hold that thought, and you never know, maybe one of these days it'll happen.
You'd have to strap yourself in for the ride for that one, I think, most definitely. So question 5 is from Stuart in Edinburgh. How is the new still house going?
Okay, so demand is so high for our Ardbeg whiskies that the old still house with only one wash still and one spirit still just wasn't enough to satisfy global demand. So we built a beautiful, spectacular new still house, and we've basically doubled the distillation capacity. We now have 2 wash stills and 2 spirit stills. So guess what? That'll allow us to make even more of our wonderful Ardbeg whisky.
And have more time for experiments?
Indeed, indeed.
Yes,
but, you know, it was, what can I say? It was a rather nervous time. You know, we don't do anything in half measures here at Ardbeg. So we put 4 brand spanking new pot stills in, and it did take us a little bit of time to get things back into balance. But now we've done that, and we're very happy with what we've got. And anyone who's watching this, I would urge you, if you get the chance, come and see us at the distillery. The still house is magnificent. It's
phenomenal. It is absolutely breathtaking. Question 6 from Angelo in London. When will you make a whisky that tastes like Sicily? This is an odd question, but Sicily, have you been to Sicily?
It's a very odd question, and the first thing I would say is I don't know who Sicily is, and I've never tasted her. But seriously, you know, if you go, Sicily makes me think of lemon groves and all these sort of herbal flavours. So I really cannot seriously answer this question. However, you might just have inspired us to do something different. So maybe in 10 years' time, I will be able to answer that question.
I feel a trip coming on, definitely. So, question 7, 2 related questions here from 2 separate people. So we've got Andy and Irvin asks, if you could go back in time, which band would you want to see live? And then Danny in Mexico asks, what punk song would you headbang to enjoy your Ardbeg dram? Okay,
so you know, the theme of Ardcore is all about punk, but the honest answer to that about the band I would like to see, not actually a punk band, it would be Prince and the Revolution, who I have seen a number of times in the past, so I'd love to go back in time and see them again.
And what about the headbanging?
Headbanging, right. My favourite punk group, who I actually saw live on a number of occasions at the Glasgow Apollo, were The Damned. So it's their seminal song, New Rose. That's the one I'll be headbanging to as I sip on my Ardcore.
Excellent. Well, I think the band may have covered that earlier on today, actually. So, final question here now is from Abby in London. So,
okay. Should I brace myself for this one?
It's not particularly hard, but I'm interested as to how you answer this one. Can you give us any hint as what is planned for next year's Ardbeg Day limited release?
So the simple answer to that, Abby, is yes, I could do, but I'm not going to. Okay, I want to tease you a little bit with this, but what I will say is that as for Ardcore, you know, this is a process, it'll be a process-driven whisky. Ardcore was all about the raw materials, the black malt, but next year's release, which we haven't yet named, but this is more to do with the actual distillation process itself. Excellent. And I'll leave it at that. Say no more, don't give any more hints. Superb. So I think that's us. I think we're nearly there. Yep. Unfortunately, folks, it's time to call it a day. You know, and what a day it's been. Ardbeg Day here. Gillian and I actually physically being at the Ardbeg distillery for the first time for many years, and we've had such fun. There's been so many fab things going on here. So it just remains for us to say one final thing. See you next year, punks!
So good to be back having great whisky with friends here in glorious Ardbeg. So, Slange Mat, we're about to open the gates. Let's have a good one. Cheers all!
Slange
Canada! Sweden! Germany!
Brazil!
Poland! Yorkshire! America!
We are. Amazing time, amazing. Thank you.
Absolutely, yes. Who can't?
Good day, aye. Always a good day, aye.
The band and the music has been great. And the whiskey.
Excellent, the weather's been beautiful, whiskey's lovely.